Hi. Hello,
Hello.
welcome to You Do You. And I have a fab guest here who is also a good friend. We've known each other for 5 years now.
Yeah, 5 years.
It's been great times. So, a very warm welcome to the graphic designer, Cameron Tait. Hello.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming. And I believe you're not in Scotland at the moment. Where are you right now?
No, I'm currently in Düsseldorf in the north of Germany, which is where we both were 2 years ago for Erasmus. So I'm back here.
Easy times. And why did you decide to come back precisely?
It's I think you do the best design work in places that you feel most comfortable. And for me, it was really a place where, I had a bit of independence, a bit kind of free reign, and I wanted to have that kind of security and feel in my design work as well. It was a really nice place to come back to. And also, I had a offer of an internship at Meta Design, which so I was ecstatic to be able to go and work with those guys. So it was really cool. It was really cool to come back.
It must be quite nostalgic as well, being able to go back to the places where you used to hang out all the time. Like, I found when I went back, it was really weird because the folks that I met when I was there weren't there anymore. Some were and some weren't. So did you find that when you also went back that you were like, oh, it's just not the same?
I think there's an element of kind of that where you're kind of back here, but you're reflecting on kind of your experiences before, but also forging new ones as well. I definitely think it's interesting. Like there's a lot of things I've kind of started to do that I maybe didn't get the opportunity to do before. So it's quite nice. We weren't obviously here for that long, so again, it does feel like it's got that newness, that kind of experience. So it still feels quite fresh.
I totally feel you. So to kick us off anyway, after our wee natter, could you just chat about how you came to where you are now?
So I was always super creative, like growing up. I mean, it's what it's what all the greats say, but I think it's the creativity. I definitely think creativity a lot of the time it comes from an early age, and it's for me it was something that was encouraged at an early age, and so I was quite fortunate in that sense. I know there's a lot of people where maybe creativity wasn't looked upon in a positive light. So, but no, I was definitely encouraged to pursue it. I had a lot of support to really just go for whatever my ambition was. And for me, it was design. I did it, I think it was quite early on that I looked at graphic design as an avenue for my creativity. Because I really liked, I love stories and, their different forms, art forms and music. And for me, design was almost like an extension of that. Like I see design as kind of, I guess like storytelling. Like to me, the good design is trying to find a story for for a product or a client or a target audience. You're trying to convey that, and that is an element of storytelling. So it's kind of a way of kind of visually, going down that path. And so to me, like I felt like there was a nice kind of marriage between that, like my ideology of design and storytelling. Like it was good. I kind of think of it as like, I guess, narrative. It's a narrative kind of way of looking at things. So to me, I really wanted to pursue my creativity. Graphic design was an outlet for that. And then following university, I kind of, during university, I kind of transitioned a little bit towards branding, because with branding, I feel like that's where you've got the opportunity in a lot of these cases to kind of, develop an identity and shape that. But really, I found that the branding kind of opens you up to a lot of different avenues as well. like there's a lot to be said. I know a lot of people, they talk about specialization and stuff, but I think there's something to be said as well for the other way of it, where I'm a bit flexible, I guess, in my disciplines. I try a little bit of everything. And so, with the branding, when I started going, I went to 42 Studio in Aberdeen, and then I went to Method Design in Dusseldorf. And there I found that my knowledge of branding, like elements of that could be applied, when it comes to campaigning and logo design and icon design, if you're going into UI. So there's definitely avenues of branding that I could then explore further into different mediums. So yeah, so really that's kind of where I've got today, where I kind of have my hand in, I guess, a few different pies.
Mm-hmm. The storytelling obviously is like the catalyst of the decision to go on to doing it. But what is it about storytelling that you are so drawn to?
I mean, I just think storytelling is just such a primal expression of creativity, because if you think about it, people have been telling stories for forever, but bedtime stories, cave paintings, whatever. I think it's really interesting to kind of, how do you like convey messages? It's all about communication, like and how do you do that in a modern sense? And I guess university was about articulating that a little bit better, because you don't really understand why you're drawn to these things when you're young, and then maybe university start to maybe piece together where you were coming from or why you do the things you do. So yeah, I think it was definitely university was an opportunity to sort of focus in on why it was a passion for me, and then get a nice little scroll and a photo up at the end.
So what would you say is kind of your inspiration for your style, if you have a style, that is?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you do always talk about like having a style, and like I guess, I mean, I think it's difficult. Sometimes it's difficult to see a style in your own work. I think I've been told I have a style by some people, so whether or not it's people could see it or not. To me, it's important that like to have my own personality come through in my work, but also for it to fit the project or brief and stuff. And sometimes you don't necessarily want to compromise on your own like style, but also you want to do what's best for the job. But yeah, like I guess I do have a style, I guess. I mean, in terms of inspiration, like I draw kind of inspiration from like everything, media, music, art, like a lot of great designers that I really like. It's all vast. Like there's loads of different sort of designers where you take these things from, but then there's other, the outside influences as well, like, music and films, and because there's an artistry there as well. So I feel like as a designer, you're always just soaking in, like just a sort of aesthetic sponge, and you just kind of soak
I
in.
was just going to say, like a sponge.
Yeah. So, I couldn't really pinpoint it down to one influence other than I just, I'm constantly, seeing things and getting motivated. I mean, there's like the designer thing where like, you've got to be careful. You can go on Pinterest and you just kind of get lost in a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that, and then before you know it, you've just got like an artboard of like 3,000 things.
It's like there's so much inspiration that you're now lost for inspiration.
Yeah. And the problem as well is I feel like
take a step back.
I feel like you can overdo it as well, and then you start to worry about your own output as well. I think it's important as well to retain your own kind of sensibilities while you're also looking to all these other places.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so true. I'm really bad for that. So I can relate.
I love the rabbit hole of Pinterest.
We all have many rabbit holes that we go down. But I thought it was interesting that you mentioned Solbass and Eike Koenig, because they are kind of in that limbo place of graphic design and art. where they very much overlap. And I think there can be some discussion sometimes of, is graphic design art? Like, what would you say? Would you be like, yes, it's art?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I mean, because I think when there's a, there's a motivation behind it, like this decisiveness, like everything's done with design. I guess with a lot of design, there's maybe a bit more functionality goes into play. Not always, but so I guess maybe people would say that would take away from it, but it's definitely an art form because it's like it's a creative output, and as well, like there's sometimes things are designed specifically to look a certain way, or even like look nice, and that's it's definitely an art form, I think.
So rather than it being strictly graphic design, it's more.
No, I mean it's I think I understand like the needs to kind of section things off, but I always found that it's always kind of a bit of a it's always kind of overlapping. If logo and it moves, is it animation now? Like it's everything kind of crosses over. So I don't really feel like necessarily it needs to be one thing or the other.
And considering that, you studied communication design at Grace School of Art, which I think is a super great course to enable you to do that, to be able to go into different creative sectors, if you will, to try and experiment with animation, for example. If you were to give some tips for those that are thinking or considering to go to art school, what kind of tips would you give them? Or if you were, I'm asking too much of you, I'm getting too excited about this question.
That's okay.
If you were to tell your younger self something about uni or the course or things like that, what is it that you would tell your younger self?
I think I felt like the course, as you say, was very much set out so that you could kind of explore different avenues, almost at your own pace as well. I never felt compromised into a decision or into categorizing myself. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, you've got to pick at the end which thing you are," but really, it's just for what goes in the certificate. I feel like the course really does advocate for kind of that exploration of where you want to go. I mean, our Grays they had a good kind of mix of tutors that had different specialities, and then with CCS and when you're doing essays and stuff, you would overlap and talk with people of other disciplines. There was always the art school. They tried to kind of mix the disciplines. I mean, I guess maybe there's ways they could have done it more, but like when the degree shows and stuff, it's a collective thing a lot of the time. But I guess if someone was really interested in design, like I feel bad when I hear people that I don't know how many times you've heard this when people say, "Oh, I really wanted to do art design, but my parents, didn't want me to." And I just think it's just sad for me because I think it's really important to follow your passion, whatever it is. So yeah, like if someone was on the fence about design, then I guess just if it's something that you feel like you're into or feel like you could contribute or want to explore, then go for it. Go for it.
Cool. Very good advice. Just go for it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they would be coming to me for advice, but either way, they'd get some.
I think you're one of these people though that are very much like, I'm just going to go and do, and that's incredible to see because
it's a good philosophy. It's also a bad philosophy at times. It's kind of like we'll do this and then we'll deal with this other issues with it or logistics. We'll just solve that. Whatever, doesn't matter. Good, go into another country. It's cool. We'll just we'll see what happens.
But I think sometimes that kind of just go for it is quite a good philosophy to have because it's more like, you know what, what happens happens, and it's something will come of this, whether that's good or bad, but there's gonna be a new
Plus, I think
thing that you're gonna learn from it.
I think it's important to not have avenues that you regret not taking. You know, like it's like you said, you know, I like to try things and see if it's for me or not. Because I think that's the only way. The only way to work out what you want to do is by, I guess, ruling out what you don't or what you haven't enjoyed. Like if you can't really quite work out where you fit, then just try lots of things. See what, you know, it sounds simple, but you know, I guess a lot of the time you can be just locked into a path and kind of be set on that, and then it might not be what you hoped it was.
For sure. So when it comes to your journey, are there some things that you really struggled with, but you managed to overcome? And how did you go about doing that?
I think for me, one of the things was, I guess, the networking side of it, because I think, like, you know, now you realize how important it is to have these creative contacts and you know, people in industry that you can discuss with and talk shop and that kind of thing. But I feel like definitely early in my career, I was a bit kind of caught up in my own design, and you kind of forget to, you know, look at the outside world a bit. But also, you know, it's definitely, I think that it can be a bit scary at times as well. Like I was saying this to a co-worker when I started at Meta. There is definitely a thing I feel, or personally, when you come out of uni, like there's an element of not belonging. And sometimes, you know, you see when you're at uni, you see these established designers as like these mythical, these mythical things, you know, and then, you know, you just, you know, the Glasgow the Design Festival for Scotland is a really good example of, you know, these environments where, you know, you go along and then you engage with people of industry and you realize that, you know, you're all just in the same boat, you know, and you're just chatting to them. And I think that there was definitely that side of it where you've got to kind of get round, I guess, a fear or a confidence thing. But, you know, I think confidence ebbs and flows. Like you have days, I mean, there's days where you know, I'll maybe do something, I'll think, you're pretty good at this, you know, and then there's the other days when, you know, you just feel really out of your depth or feel like you're not good enough. But I think it's definitely important to have different contacts in the design industry as well, just so, you know, also, you know, can help out as well if you've got issues or things you're unaware of, you know, even like smallest things, you know, like charging clients or, you know, whatever it is, charging clients, how do you deal, you know, what's your process, what's your, you know, all these little questions that you might have. I think it's important to have these contacts and then to not be afraid of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think because like what you said about paying and like copyright, maybe even all this kind of stuff, like they don't really, well, we certainly didn't really have it at all at uni being taught to us.
Yeah, no, it's kind of
and having that, those contacts to be able to be like, hey, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here, so please help. So yeah, how would you go about getting these contacts? Like how do you do it?
I mean, I consider you to be one of the best at that side of it. But I mean, the way I think it's just showing interest and actively, like, you know, no one's gonna look you down, and you know, so I think it's to just actively pursue things that you're interested in. You know, there's a company or a brand you like, and that, you know, message them. I feel like social media, these platforms, they really, you know, benefit us as creatives because we can link up, you know, in ways that wasn't available, you know, 20, 30 years ago, and you can establish these, you know, these relationships across countries and continents. And yeah, I guess, you know, if you've got, you know, mentors, people you want to learn from, people you aspire to, then, you know, it can't hurt to just message them, I guess, and see. And also, if you get involved in other things, if there's creative pop-ups, all this kind of thing, and online movements, like I feel like if you get involved in things, you'll attract like-minded people.
Yeah, for sure. I think, just being yourself as well, and just messaging folk being like, hey, I really like your work and I think you're fab.
Yeah.
Please teach me your ways is also like a super helpful way of building relationship, but also like contacts that you can have as almost like your mentors that can help and guide you. I think it actually surprised me how many people actually reply to these messages, and you think they're so big and everything, but they, like you said before, like you're meeting them and you chat to them and they're actually just normal people. And like, oh, they're not aliens, they're actual people.
They're like us. No, but it's definitely, and I like what you said. I think it's what you were touching on, being yourself. Like, everything about the creative industry is that there's no need for facade bravado. Like, you can be yourself and wear yourself, and oddball, quirky personalities, that like there's a place for you. You don't feel like you're left out or stuff. Like I think our creative industry is, you really get a lot of expressive people, and I think it's nice. You're turning up, you don't have to, rigid faced interview where you're just boilerplate, like questions, generic, just, hit all the questions and like your personality is allowed, it's allowed to have a personality in the creative industry.
For sure. I think that's what makes you stand out, Cameron, the fact that you're yourself. Like you are a character and you cannot forget it. And I think that's what's super special about you, that being yourself, like folks can see that and they're like, oh, he's super funny, he's super cool. I think we would be...
Well, yeah, I mean, I recently had the sort of, because you're constantly getting kind of confronted with this idea of personality when, like, doing interviews and you're going into it and you're thinking, do I tone back myself a little bit? But, I feel like, I mean, to me, I don't know, when I interview, I don't feel there's much point pretending to be who I think they want me to be and then getting something and maybe finding it's not a place for me. I always approach these things just the way I am because I don't want there to be, I want it to be like full transparency about who they're hiring. This is me. I'm, I can be quite, outgoing, I guess, like a quite full personality. But, I don't want there to be any, misrepresentations. I think it's important that they understand who they're hiring. And I also understand that it's okay to be me, because if you go into an interview by as yourself and they hire you, then they're completely comfortable with who you are.
Yeah, 100%. So you moved to Düsseldorf. We touched on this already.
Yeah.
But what is it about Düsseldorf that you're obsessed with?
A lot of people said I was obsessed with Düsseldorf. Places in the world that, like, I was quite lucky when I was younger. I've got to travel to a lot of really cool places. I really think it informed you as a person. But I mean, it's not necessarily. I mean, I always obviously have a lot of personal joy. Like, there's lots of places I like here and familiar with. I mean, really, I guess it's just like a lifestyle thing. It's I feel a bit more proactive. It's nice, it's warm, it's. But really, I kind of like to pursue different places just because I feel like it re-energizes me, creatively as well. And it's not necessarily Düsseldorf. Düsseldorf was just a place I wanted to return to, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity with Meta Design. But there's loads of places that I really want to go because I feel like I take all these. I mean, definitely now, it might be different in the future, but now I take things in phases. And like when we were in Aberdeen for university, like I feel like that kind of chapter's done. It's coming full circle. We're back to books, but yeah, I feel like the chapter's kind of done. And like, every now and then, I feel like change can be good to kind of stimulate. And we weren't in Düsseldorf for long, so I felt like it was still open to go back into. And it's a place I knew I would enjoy. So I felt like it was a good place to maybe start, like take I guess the baby steps.
Do you think? I mean, I know your plan is to be there for a few years potentially, but considering what's been going on recently with the pandemic and everything, how have you been coping?
It's obviously taken a bit of adjusting. I had quite an interesting. It led to quite an interesting experience for me because I was over for like a practicum, so it's kind of like a sort of learn on the job kind of scenario. But what was good was they were quite open-handed with briefs and projects, and there was an element of trust that as a junior starting out in industry, like it's definitely rewarding, and it feels validating when you get that level of trust. So I was definitely felt like valued in my position, and then it kind of had the to kind of go into home office, which for me was really interesting. I guess at the time I was quite disappointed because I just kind of established myself in the office and getting to know folk. And particularly, I was new country, it's new culture, it's, things are different. So you're still kind of finding your feet. But yeah, like the home office thing was a bit of an adjustment. You're doing Zoom calls every day, you're doing Skypes, maybe the calls sometimes become a bit more, functional. There's a bit less time for kind of anything else. You're having your calls, you're doing your briefings, and then it's kind of over. But it was, on the flip side, it was a really good test as well. I feel like it was a good way to kind of, for a start, you had the work and you could focus on that. But at the same time, working from home, it's just another experience. It's a different way of working. It's a compromise, and I guess it's something that you may be better for. Now like that. So many of us in the industry that have now had to do the remote work. Before that might have been a scary thing. The idea of working somewhere but not interacting with everyone every day or being in the office. And now it's less of a daunting prospect for people. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's kind of, there's been good and there's been bad from it.
I think because of this situation that you've had to go through where you've had to work at home and not really with people, like you've been working with people, but you've been working with them virtually.
Yeah.
This has shifted maybe in what you're thinking for the future. Like, would you be more open to freelancing? Would you be more keen to actually stay in a studio? Are you quite happy working alone? Like, kind of going through your mind?
I like a nice balance where you can kind of work autonomously, but you also have like a structure and a team around you. It can also be a nice comfort thing having people, but also, it's, you learn more. That's because when you're there every day, you're interacting with people, their work, their stuff, giving opinions. Then it's more of a you're kind of you're giving and you're also gaining a little bit as well. Like I definitely think there's an area of where you can learn from people, and it's a lot better when you're surrounded by them. Personally, I've always liked the sort of studio atmosphere and environment. So I definitely that's kind of where I see myself, at least for the next while. I'd like to be in teams. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm definitely one of those folks that just need to be around people when I'm working. Like, I don't need to speak to you, but as long as you're here, like in the area, then that's cool. That's good.
Yeah, general vicinity, corner of the eye, then they're good.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of studios, I thought it'd be cool to chat a little bit about this virtual studio.
Yes, that was pretty cool.
You always have. So can you talk a little bit about why you started it and how it's been going?
So the virtual studio, it came about, I kind of, we had kind of a couple of catch-ups with people from university, and while we were there and having these catch-ups, one of the issues that I guess we'd all kind of been facing is this isolation, which, you're sitting working on projects and you're not talking to people for hours on end, and it can be a bit kind of disheartening. So we decided, me and a couple of others, Sean, Colin, we decided that a way around it was this idea of a virtual studio where it's just kind of a call. We just kind of a call that's constantly on, and we do it business hours, like a 9 to 5 or whatever. And what it does is, it gives you a space to be able to discuss work and also to feed off of other ideas and share things. I mean, I think one of the big losses that you have was the simple, when you're in a studio, you're working on something and you might go, what do you think of this? And it's a little quick 3 seconds, but when you're working at home, you're not going to, call someone up, like call up a creative director, what do you think of this? So it's the small interactions. It's a way to kind of house these small interactions. So the idea was this call where you didn't have to talk all the time. It wasn't like a dialogue. It was just a space where you could, talk and share things. And so sometimes you'd be sitting for long periods of, just heads down working, and then, you might have a little comment, a little chat. It's kind of, just the day-to-day, like, small talk place. Because it's the little things like that you kind of, I think, can make a studio feel, like home and a nice atmosphere. So we just decided, we did a couple of those. And they went quite well. They also, I think, help with productivity as well. Because, I feel like you push yourself a lot more when you're around other people that are working.
Mm.
So it was a nice, like, I think it worked. It came across quite well. We were worried that we could send into just a chat, but no, I think it definitely helped. I think with the day-to-day.
I love the idea of it, just purely because exactly what you say. It gives that opportunity for people to actually share what they're doing and get feedback on it. I think that's one of the things I really miss about the studio, that it's so easy to just ask for help or for advice on what you're up to and doing. Whereas now, obviously, because we're alone and at home, some of us are working, so we can't actually share what we're doing. Like, it is a little bit harder to find those opportunities to talk about your work. So I think it's really good that you guys had started it, and I hope it continues. I think it's a good thing to do. Another thing I wanted to provide a platform for is if there's anything that you would like to specifically speak about within the creative industries that you think people should talk about more. A chance.
I think, great opportunity, but I definitely think there's a lot to be said for the sort of support of creative industries kind of showing internally. Like, I think what's been quite nice about it is the idea that the industry is kind of looks after its own. I know there's a lot of studios that they've got initiatives in place to try and help people during coronavirus, because it's a scenario that's kind of affecting everyone. So, I mean, I know Jam Hot had a student support fund, which, a pretty generous thing to do to go out their way and do that. But so they also was, I think, particularly with the students, I felt like they got hit quite badly by the idea was for us, Degree Show was a forum and a place where we could express ourselves, and also it's kind of, it's a culmination of like 4 years work and study, and for a lot of people it's a chance to kind of get their work out there. And what's nice is the various ways that kind of people have banded together to try and help creatives and find solutions. I believe we discussed about before. We discussed about the Design Wains, collective of Glasgow artists who they had a show up. It was like a fundraiser for basically a brochure where they basically all the folk who were in their final years and would have been exhibitioning could send their work, and it gave a platform. There was also a billboard studio that was doing they did a billboard thing where you could. I'm trying to remember what it was called. It was like, I think it was called the degree show, the external degree show.
I remember seeing it, but I've lost the name of it as well.
Yeah, I've been trying to get these things out there and share them with people. But it was quite nice. You had them on long form billboards, and then of course you have the various online and virtual degree shows that are being hosted. And me and a couple of other crews, we've been trying to catalogue that as well, which is it's fun to kind of hunt that all down. But it's also, I mean, the students themselves have been quite proactive. It's been nice to see, I know from Gray's, like their year, I know they kind of took it upon themselves to try and get their work out there as well. So it's good to see. And I liked the fact that the industry was coming together to try and support them. And a lot of studios were kind of trying to help them out. So I definitely think that's been a positive of the whole scenario.
Very good. Well, a massive thank you for joining us here. And I think you're fab and that you're great. Keep doing you, and I look forward to seeing where you end up in the future, because it's only going to go up and up from here on. I really hope so. But yes, a massive thank you for joining again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It's chats, design, and all things.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the chat.
Yeah.